Hello and welcome. The aim of today's video is to show you how to breed your goldfish, be it comet or shrimpumpkin or fancy tail. I've bred about 1,000 baby goldfish over the last 2 years and I thought I'd share this information with you. Now I'm going to break this down to 4 main points for success: the spawning area, the spawning material used, the fish and how to gender them, and a little bit of extra tips that I found help a lot. Now the first and most crucial point is setting up the spawning area. Now the first step is to choose a suitable area to spawn your fish. Now there's a few options for this, and that can involve a floating net like this one here, or a smaller separate pond that you have, isolated from the rest of the fish. Or this, which is probably my favorite option, and all it simply is just a little tub. I'd say about 1.5 meters long, or about a meter, like 40 long, and only about 9-10 inches in depth. And the reason I prefer these is because they're nice and shallow. In fact, I've actually got one here behind me that I've used to actually grow on baby goldfish in the past. It's a perfect environment for small goldfish. It's got plenty of natural bugs and such, and the green water's actually good because it helps Daphnia survive, which is small fish eat off. But a very shallow tub like this is the first thing you're going to need. It sort of mimics the natural spawning environment of goldfish, which would have been, the shallower waters of the pond or the lake that they come from. So this sort of shallower tub shape is much more effective for spawning your fish. Once you've chosen your tub, it's time to fill it up. Now I prefer to use pond water from one of my ponds, but you can use tap water. Just don't forget to add deglorinator. Now I prefer using pond water because it's already set up and all the nitrates are all balanced, but it's really up to you. Tap water will be completely fine. Just make sure you do add all the correct supplements to water. And once you fill up the tank, it should look something like this. Just a nice full tub. Now once you've prepared the tub, it's time to move on to choosing your spawning material. Now you can use something more artificial like these spawning brushes here, although I don't think they look great. I would much rather use live plants like this one here, this beautiful reed with a bit of algae on the side. Now the primary reason for that is since we're not using a filter on this tub, otherwise it would kill the fry, is that a live plant will help keep the water clean by consuming all the bad ammonia and then turning it into nitrates and such. Also, the other reason that using live plants is quite useful is the baby fish, once they do hatch, have somewhere to hide, and also the plant will contain plenty of micro sort of bugs and such that the fish can feed on for the first couple of weeks. It's just a really good option because it's just the best of both worlds, and not to mention it just looks a lot better. Now the algae does look bad, but this algae contains a high amount of Daphnia, which is great for the fish. Another quite effective plant that you can use is hornwort. It's a very good plant because it produces a high amount of oxygen, and the bushy nature of the plant allows the fry to hide within the branches, which is quite useful. Now it's finally time for the most exciting step, which is choosing your fish. Now this next part really depends on your personal tastes. You could try to spawn some fancy goldfish like these two here. Now unfortunately for me, these were both female, which is quite unfortunate, so I had to remove one of them and then look for some more males. I will show you how to gender them in a second, but yeah, you could choose to use these females if you'd like. Now comes the fun part, and that is choosing the fish you want to spawn with. Now unfortunately, as fun as it would be to spawn with this goldfish here, I unfortunately don't have any males that are similar to her, and that is the one thing you want to do, is make sure the fish that you're breeding together are of a similar type, so comet with comet or shrimpumpkin with shrimpumpkin basically. So unfortunately, since I don't have a male the same as this female, I'm just going to take her out and put her back in the main pond. Now in this spot here, I've just got like 4 or 5 comet goldfish left. Now if you're wondering how to gender the fish, it's quite simple. If they're of an age above 2 or 3 years, it'll be very obvious in the spring. And if you look for females, for example, it's just the size of their bellies. If you look at the size of this fish here, it's not fat, that big bulge on the bottom. If you give it a push and it's just squidgy, that means it's a female. Same with this one here. If you look at the size of this one's belly, it's like a balloon. That means it's just full of eggs at the moment. And then also for males to check, if you feel the gill plates on them, I'll use this one here as an example. If you feel the gill plates on these fish, careful, not to drop the fish. If you feel the gill plates, what you'll feel is lumps on the side. And if I can actually show them to you here on this fish, there's little bumps you'll see, and are used to sort of brush up against the female and sort of push her around. And in the spring, if you feel the male's gills, they'll be rough like that. So that's how you would tell. Now in terms of deciding what fish to use to spawn, it's really up to you. Now I'm leaning towards using this one here, just because it's a little bit smaller, and then using these 3 males here. The ratio you really want to go for is 2 or 3 males to 1 female. That will just sort of reach the max fertilization of the eggs. If you use 1, like very few of the eggs will get fertilized, and if you use any more than 3, then chances are the fish could actually die, the female, because she just gets pushed around too much. So I think for this batch, I'm most likely going to use this one here and then these 3 males with her, just because the colours are quite similar and they're of a similar size to each other. This one's just a bit too big, I reckon, for the tank I'm going to be using. Now, once you've chosen your breeding group, you should introduce them into the spawning area. Now, I prefer to put the female in first, just to give her a chance to settle in. And then about a couple hours later, I will add the males into the pond. That's just because the female needs to have a chance to sort of acclimate to the environment, because she is the main sort of fish you're using here. She's the one that needs to be the most comfortable out of all of your fish. Now, you can put them all at once. There's really no, like, it won't affect it that greatly. But I just prefer to put the female in a few hours before, so she's a bit more comfortable, and then I'll add the males in a little bit later. Now, all there's left to do now is wait. I would leave them in here for about 3 nights maximum. If they don't spawn after that, then take them out, and you can try it again, but I'd wait another week before putting them back in. They will usually spawn the second night. Now, unfortunately with this batch, well, not unfortunately, but it just meant I couldn't record it. They spawned on the first night, so I actually missed the spawning, but usually they should spawn in around the second night. If you don't see any action though, do take them out. And if you do wait patiently, you should be met with this present surprise. About 1,000 eggs I'd say are in here, or probably more. I'm just letting them sit. The eggs should take about 4 or 5 days, maybe even a week to hatch. It's really depending on the heat that you have them in. But they should look like this. And if you look at some of the white ones here, if the eggs are looking white, that means they're not fertilised and therefore they're starting to go fungal. But if the eggs are clear, they therefore were fertilised and starting to develop into young fish. But the best thing to do is just to leave them in the environment, let them settle, and then give them about 4 or 5 days. And then you should see some very tiny fish starting to spawn. And if you wait patiently about 8 days after the spawning, you should be met with this. It's kind of hard to see here, and I will put an arrow to it, but it's a small, like 1-day-old goldfish fry I managed to catch out of the egg batch that I showed you previous. Now, they will grow extremely fast. Now, for the first 2 days or so, they will sustain themselves off of the food in the egg sac. But after the first few days, I recommend you get some Daphnia or just some sort of microscopic invertebrate or bug to feed them. You can also feed them egg yolk as well, but that's quite dirty, so I don't really recommend it. But all you can really do now is wait, and just wait for them to grow. Here's a bit of a closer look at the fish, but it is a tiny little speck, so they might be hard to see. And if you wait patiently for about a month, this is what it will turn out being like. Now, they won't stay silver forever. They will develop colours as they get older in some fish. And this one's actually a semi-long fin because the mum was a short fin. The 2 dads were long fins. But very beautiful fish. And they will develop colour as they get older, as I said. But yeah, just absolutely amazing. And if you follow these steps, hopefully you can achieve the same goal too. I hope this tutorial helped you. And let me know in the comments down below if you do see any success this year from your goldfish or your koi even. You can use this method for koi fish as well, although I would use a slightly larger tub for that sort of process. Now, hope you enjoyed guys, and see you in the next one.